This is a Celtic State of Mind, and I'm delighted this week to be joined once again by Tommy Sheridan, where we will be speaking to a Celtic hero who scored over 100 goals for the club, none other than Big John HARTSON. But before I do that, Tommy, you have worn some cracking t-shirts on this show. This is potentially the best. Tell us a wee bit about that.
Well, you think it's the best because you're a musical genius. You know what you don't know about music, it hasn't been written yet. I love it because I love Phil Lynott. I think he's a fantastic character. Boys are back in town. But you actually have got a better story.
I love Thin Lizzy through my old fella. He was a massive fan of Thin Lizzy. And Phil Lynnott's mother was Philomena. And she had a pub in Manchester. And there was a whole group of guys used to go in for a bevy who I think what we would describe them as, Tommy, would be gangsters, wise guys, okay, right? But they didn't have a name. The gang didn't have a name. And at that time, on the TV, they were advertising Macintosh's Quality Street chocolates that you all remember from Christmas time, right? Sure. And the advert was called the Quality Street Gang. So, Tommy, you might have been the guy with the soft centre, right? And I might have been the guy with the minty aroma, right, okay, who knows? Okay. And we were all characters, but we dressed like the Bugsy Malone characters in the old pinstripe suits. And they were called the Quality Street Gang. So it was on the advert. And 1 week, these guys from the gang in Manchester walk into the pub, and Philomena might have been pulling a pint, but they were all suited up, looking like someone out the Cray Twins kind of era. And somebody shouted over, "Who do you think you are, the Quality Street Gang?" Right, so that's where the term started. How that got to Celtic Park, I'll explain in a moment. But the Boys Are Back in Town, Phil Lynott wrote that song about the original Quality Street Gang, i.e. the Manchester band. The gang who used to come into the band of brothers who used to come into his mum's pub. So anyway, in that boozer was, from time to time, Paddy Crerand and George Best, believe it or not. Now, Paddy Crerand was still involved with Manchester United. Georgie Best's days were over in terms of top flight football, but they would meet for a bounce game on a Sunday, as middle-aged guys do, Tommy, you and I included. And in that game were members of the Quality Street Gang, so Paddy Crerand knew the term. He then comes up to Celtic Park, he's talking to Jock Stein around about the time that your Dalglish and Macari and all that are breaking into the side, and Jock Stein is waxing lyrical about this group of players, a couple of whom are standing there all suited and booted. Paddy says to Jock, "Who do they think they are? The Quality Street Gang."
Wow, and that's where the term,
that's where it started.
The Quality Street Kids came from.
That's where it came
Absolutely from. Brilliant.
John, welcome to Barra's Art and Design. Always an absolute pleasure to see you. How you been?
I've been good, Paul, yeah. I've been good, mate. You know, out in Edinburgh, just living a quiet life now. Wife's good. My kids are actually on holidays this week, so my wife's taking them up to Spearn Bridge to see the mother-in-law. So I've got a couple of days on my own. I've arranged a game of golf tomorrow at Glen Eagles. And then I'm doing a dinner in Gloucester Friday night. Then I'm going to get the train from Bristol down to Swansea, spend a couple of days with my boy, and then fly back up on Monday. And I'm looking forward to being with you next Friday.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for that in this very venue as well, John. I mean, I want to start off with that because the affinity, you've played with some big football clubs. The affinity that you have with the Celtic fans, what I would like to ask you, is it as strong as any of the others?
Celtic? Oh, it's bigger. It's much, much bigger. I think when you come to Celtic, I think you're respected and you're always pretty well liked. If you've happened to do well, I think that is bigger and it grows. And everybody that's played for Celtic will always get generally a nice welcome when they come back. But I think if you've played in a magnificent side and you've achieved things like I did, not to say you're treated any different, but I love going and doing sort of Celtic after dinners and special guest evenings because it's wonderful for me to give something back. And I'm always been somebody who likes to talk about Sutton and what was Larson like. And I'll tell them what Larson was like, his character, his play inside. What was Martin like? So people that come to these events, they never get to ask you that. All they can do is look on Google and they can remember you from the days where you played. But Yeah, I had a wonderful affinity with the Celtic crowd. I think it helped when I scored a few goals against our biggest rivals, Rangers. It helps when you get 110 goals. I was very consistent. And when I first arrived, as you know, I didn't really know how it would go because Celtic had just won the treble. They're a magnificent side.
Yeah.
You know, Chris and Henrik had scored 66 goals between them. They were a very, very good partnership. So I'm thinking, how am I gonna dislodge one of these two? And it was never the case because Martin never saw it that way. He always felt that Chris could sort of drop in and play as a number 8 or a centre back, in which Chris, in all fairness to him, he was willing to accept that because he could have made my time here a little bit more difficult if he would have said, because I always thought Chris Sutton's best position was centre forward.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's a Golden Boot winner, he's a Premier League winner, obviously at Blackburn. But Martin always felt if he could get the three of us in the one team, you know, we were a lot stronger, and that's what happened.
Yeah, you know, when you look at that team and you look at Chris Sutton, you now see him as a pundit, John, and he's got that wit, and you see it on the live stage. You've shared the stage many times with Chris.
Yeah.
Was he like that in the dressing room? Is that the Chris Sutton that you knew as a player?
He was a little bit, yeah. You know, Chris would always be, you know, full of wit and wouldn't quite give an awful lot away, but he was funny with it. You know, he had that way to be funny with it. He wasn't nasty. It was more like fun. Like even now on the television, he's not nasty. It's more like you just take to him because the way he puts things across. And we've become great friends, you know. I think we played with each other for the best part of 4 years. And we played similar roles. If you know, we were both centre forward, just like, you know, the goalkeeping culture. There's very lot of respect if you're a goalkeeper. I respect the job that he did. We were totally different players, by the way. And he respected what I did, you know, as a centre forward, the centre forwards union, if you like. So I've always had a lot of time and respect for Chris. And I think he's gone into the media and he's doing very well. And good luck to him. You know, he comes across very honest. He'll say what he says, but he'll say it in a good way. I think he's a bright person as well, and that comes across. And he's lasted, you know,
Yeah.
which is good. I always think in the media, we've all got about 10, 12 years, you know, and I've done all the shows. I've done Match of the Day, Football Focus. I used to do 40, 50 BBC 5 lives every weekend for the BBC. I'd be at different stadium every weekend. And that's dried up slightly for me because there's new ones coming through all the time. There's younger ones, and if you ask these players that are just about to retire, their agents will tell you we're trying to get them into the media. They're all very articulate, they're good looking, they can speak, they want to go into the media, they want to be on television. And sometimes when somebody's coming through, it's happened to loads and loads of pundits, hundreds, thousands of pundits. You get your 10 or 12 years, and then you're edged out slightly. So you go from having a contract to going more ad hoc, where you're called in once a month or whatever it is. And that's why now I've come to realise that the media, it was great while it lasted, but I've gone into one or two other things now with friends, you know, some projects and things like that, because I want to keep working, you know, and I just think the media has dried up slightly, no fault of my own. I just think that, you know, nowadays as well, the people that are on the television, the media side of things, just dried up slightly. I'm still dipping my toe now and again, here and there, but in general, the contracts are not there anymore. But I'm happy. I'm happy with that. I don't have to go and work every Saturday. I like to take my little daughter to the pitches. I like to have a bit of family time. I like to go and have a game of golf with my mates. So luckily for me, I've not got an ego on that side. I don't mind not being on the television or not being on the radio. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, then I'm more than happy. And as I said, I've had a great run, do you know?
You mentioned golf. I don't know about you, Tommy. I've never hit a golf ball in my life, John, right? That was a big part of the culture in football, wasn't it? What's your take on it? Are you a golfer?
First time I ever golfed was probably a year ago. It was my mate's 60th, and he'd organised a trip for 12 of us to go to Portugal, to go to Albufeira.
Albufeira, yeah.
One of these golf packages, John, you know. And I've known him since he's a blue nose as well, but I've known him since we were 10 years of age, right?
You're allowed one.
Well, I'm allowed to, I'm allowed one. And he says, Tommy, you need to come here. You don't need to play. You don't need to play. Just come get it.
Sit in the buggy, follow us round.
But tell you what, John, what he said to me was, he says, I love badminton, squash, I love tennis. So he says, you've got good eye to ball coordination. He says, try it. Yeah, I tried it. And we done the round and I got, it was a ridiculous handicap. Yeah. But because of my ridiculous handicap, I ended up winning.
Yeah,
because once he gave me a couple of tips about keep your eye on the back of the ball, keep your eye on the back and let it follow through, all these types of things. And I was quite good at listening to him. I ended up winning, so they banned me for it.
Well, my wife, she thinks golf's 6 hours. But it's only like 4 hours, but you're in the clubhouse afterwards, and she started to learn now it's not 6 hours, you know. But you try anything.
But you're a good player, big man.
I play off a decent handicap. Yeah, I've been off single figures now for a while. But I just love my golf. I like getting out there. I like socialising. And afterwards, you know, you can talk about anything on the golf course. You know, it's the four of you. You just mingle and nobody judges anybody. You can hit one off the tee. You can hit it 300 yards down the fairway. It's a good leveller, golf, you know. And then afterwards, then you're in the bar and you can have a bite to eat and the boys and just say cheerio. See you next week. And I like that part of things, you know.
Have you had your game that you were promised from Dermot Desmond, the Tiger Woods?
Really tell that story.
Oh, not quite. No, not quite. But I remember that one. I'll obviously share it to the listeners and people that are watching. I say it's a joke, really. It's a joke. Well, I found it about 7 or 8 years ago, and I say when I first came to Celtic, I was in Heathrow. I was flying up that day. It was August the 2nd, you know, the day that Celtic played in Ryan Giggs' testimonial at Old Trafford. Mm-hmm. And we had a brilliant team. And I'm in the airport. I'm just about to fly up to Glasgow to put pen to paper. And I'd failed 4 medicals, you know, as you know. So Martin had said, you know, you won't have a medical, son. He said, I know what you've been through. I know your medical history. And I'm delighted to get you on board. So Martin was away with the team, so I thought I'd fly up. And I stayed in number 1 Devonshire Gardens that night, which was great. So I'm at the airport just about to fly, and my representatives are on the phone. So he says to me, John, someone here wants to speak to you. So I took the phone off him. And I went, hello? And he went, hiya, John, it's Dermot Desmond here. So I then said to my agent, who's doing that? I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. And he went, he's the owner, he's the major shareholder. And I went, hello, Mr. Desmond, how are you? And he said, look, he said, we've been chasing you for a while. He said, Martin's been a big admirer. He said, we were delighted you failed that medical across the road, obviously. And I said, all right, okay. And he said, look, we've got a great team. I said, I know that, Mr. Desmond, I know that. And he said, we just won the treble. He said, we've got a tremendous manager. He said, we'll get you up. He said, I understand you're signing a 4-year contract. I said, yeah. And he said, look, we sort you out, your family and everything else, nice schools for the kids. I said, oh, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I said, I cannot wait to put pen to paper. And I'd been through it a while with the failed medicals, and I was starting to judge myself whether I could ever pass a medical. Do you know, I failed 4.
What age were you, John? 26?
I was 26. And I'd only had a tiny little small operation at Wimbledon, you know, a year or 2 prior. Mm-hmm. But it was showing up, something was showing up on the scan. And it was big money deals. I wasn't going for 150 grand or 200 grand where they just go, see that one through. I was going for record money on big wages. Mm-hmm. So the whole package was massive in terms of what they had to pay. So I'm just about to put the phone down now, and I said, oh, brilliant, I can't wait, it's really positive. And he said, look, John, he said, are you a golfer? And I knew what was coming, in a way. And I said, yeah, I love my golf, Mr. Desmond. He said, oh, so do I. And I've since seen him at these pro-ams and at the Dunhill and everything. He loves his golf, with Desmond. Mm-hmm. So I said, yeah. I said, I love my golf, do you know, yeah. And he said, look, he said, would you like me to arrange a game? He said, myself, he said, talking about himself, and Tiger Woods. He said, and you can choose another one to come and play with us. And I was just like, I was overwhelmed. I said, Jesus, I said, I would absolutely adore that. He's one of my heroes, Mr. Desmond. And from that phone call to today, I've not heard another word from Mr. Desmond, So he sucked me right in, and I can see how Celtic sort of entice their players to come and sign for them,
Yeah.
But it's only, it's a great after-dinner story. You read these autobiographies and people like that. It's all stories. It's all fun stories, A lot of it is, to sell when you do your build-up in the newspapers and, all these type of things, but... No, I think if you can throw a few funny jokes in there when you're on the stage, it's great because people just don't want to hear about my character all the time. My playing career. Because you can go on Google and look at the goals, you can tell all my career. They want to get a bit of an insight. They want to hear jokes about players and managers. And, I go round, I do lots of dinners. But you've got to make them funny as well at the same time,
I think the crowd loves it, John. They do. And talking about stories, there's a few stories coming from the next generation. I've noticed underneath Matt O'Neill's team, people talking like, the likes of Charlie Mulgrew and Aidan McGeady, talking about the standards that you guys set and the fact that some of them were getting a hard time, but they now look back on it, John, and think, I'm glad they treated us like that. Can you remember the young guys coming through and the fact that I think sometimes comes up for a wee bit, it was all in good fun, wasn't it? You were testing them.
I didn't give him as much of a bad time as Saturday did, but it was all in good humour, I think, and it was all in, he was never nasty or it was never really cynical, I think. But I think when they used to, I remember coming, there was Jamie Smith, there was Stephen Pearson, there was Sean Maloney was one of the first ones who broke through. There was Charlie Mulgrew that was doing okay, and then he was sold to Aberdeen, and I think maybe Gordon brought him back. So we'd always Lenny, it might have been Lenny. We were always looking at Charlie Mulgrew's sort of career. I remember that incident he had in the derby, didn't he, when he had the incident with Kyle Lafferty, remember, on the left-hand side? I think he got sent off, Charlie. Something happened.
I thought it was
After it collapsed.
Yeah, we could always see that. But I don't think it was about setting standards. I just think we were all so engrossed in winning, and we didn't go out there to impress or to set standards. But it's nice of him to say that, because we all trained as if our life depended on it, and we were all very, very good players. You look at that team, Martin O'Neill, John Robertson used to come in and play, God rest his soul, this year John's not too well at the minute. But the way we trained, and if they'd looked at us from the side or whenever one or two of them joined in, they must have gone, wow, that's the level I want to get to. Do you know, when I'm knocking it down into Henrik and Henrik's playing into Chris, getting a 1-2, and he said in the top corner, people like Sean and Jamie Smith and all these other, like Craig Beattie was another one. They must be thinking, I'd love to do that, especially out there in front of 60,000. So that was the standards we set, but we never really did it to impress them. They just looked, and they took it on board themselves, and a few of them went on to become great players themselves.
Yeah, great apprenticeship, Tony.
Brilliant apprenticeship, but John's mentioned the word there, which I want to go back on, because you mentioned the word character. And John, when did you, I'm talking about your younger age now, when did you realise that you had the character to be a footballer? Because we all play football, but we're not going to become footballers. It's our dream. You've realised the dream. Do you think there's a mixture of luck and character? What's the percentage?
Well, you need luck. You definitely need luck. Because there was better players than me growing up in Swansea at 16. Definitely. And when I go down to Swansea now, I'll go in one of the bars and see my old mates. And they'll say to me, oh, John, see Dean over there? He was better than you at 16. And I'll go, yeah, he probably was. But Dean was drinking cans of lager and messing about at 15. And where was I? I was down the local pitch doing sprints and training hard. I wanted to get away from Swansea, with no disrespect. I love Swansea, it's my hometown. But I had a bit of fire in my belly. I wanted to get away from Swansea and achieve something with my life. I wanted to do something with my life. So I went up to Luton, and I was like a raging bull at Luton, because when you go and join a club, probably the percentages is that you're not going to make it, because only one in a certain amount of thousands actually get on and become professional footballers.
What age, John? So what age are you when you...
I went at 16.
So, because the reason I'm asking is because you're a young man, you've just left Swansea.
Yeah.
There's another challenge.
I know, but I was quite shy. And I am now. Believe it or not, I am. If I walk into a place, I'll go to the back and I'll sit out of the way. And I know characters who'll sit at the front. But I think that there's a difference. We just spoke about Chris Sutton there being great in the green room, and then he goes on television live and he turns into a monster. Do you know what I mean? And I was the same. I think when I crossed the line, when I went onto the pitch, you know, that was me. I was sliding, tackling, I was bullying people. And that was always my, that was always the way I played. You know, when I went to Arsenal, I knew to make an impact, I had to smash Tony Adams in the first training session. England captain or not. When he got the ball, I was going over and I was going whack. All the other players are going, Jesus Christ, what's he like? George Graham's going, John, settle down. Tony's like that. That's when you get your respect.
Yeah.
You know, of players, that's what you do. So I quickly...
John, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but because what you've said there is right, and because you've lived it, but you need someone to go with that. You can't just smash a player and then not be as good as you are. You know, because any of us can smash a player. You need to be able to have...
Yeah, but I wanted to make an impact on the team, and with my aggression, that was one way of showing it. And then obviously you have to show that you're good enough to be at Arsenal. You know, when I joined Arsenal, I was a little toe rag who played for Luton for 2.5 years, playing in the second division. I'm now going into a team that are playing in Europe. One of my first games, we played AC Milan in the Super Cup final, because Arsenal had won the Cup Winners' Cup the year before, and AC Milan had won the European Cup. Yeah. So I'm playing against Costa Curta and Maldini and Baresi, and I'm thinking I'm either going to sink or I'm going to swim, and I want to swim, and I want to rise up to the occasion. I'm not going to be a little shrinking violet there. And to do that, I had to go and compete. I had to get hold of the ball, and I'm 19, 20 years of age, and I always felt as the years went on, I became a better player because I started to learn the art of being a centre forward, a big centre forward, where you just you play in the width of the 18-yard box. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find yourself wide when you're going over that side for for throw-ins and things like this. And as I got older, I went to West Ham and scored goals, Wimbledon, and then I had a big move up to Celtic, and then I'm playing with great players. So that's how my career pretty much went. But I had a little bit of talent, I would think. Most people have got talent, but it's how you use that talent, how you use that potential, I think, which is the key.
Yeah, you know, the AC Milan game, I was just saying to John, I looked at that yesterday, Tommy, and it was over 2 legs. You drew nothing each in the home leg, I think.
Yeah.
2-0 away, and a certain Paulo Di Canio came off the bench on both occasions for AC Milan.
Well, I never knew that. Paul told me earlier, I never knew that.
Oh, and again, you didn't play together at Celtic Park, but you played in the same park at Celtic Park, didn't you? Because you came up and it was Di Canio's home debut against Arsenal.
Right.
Yeah.
2-1.
And I was playing for us as a pre-season friendly. It was. I mean, Lee Dixon put us in front, and then Celtic actually played really well. They beat us 2-1. And we had Adams, we had Wright team, we had a lot of good players on the team, double winners, internationals, as I said. But I remember I had a little skirmish with Alan Stubbs, because when I was 17, I'm playing for Luton at Burnden Park against Bolton. And there's a corner, and Alan Stubbs has sort of nudged me, and I've gone bang, and I've elbowed him in the face, in the jaw. Referee sent me off. First time, I only played about 5 games. So I remember David Pleat, who was a wise, really good manager, David Pleat. He went upstairs at half-time. Nobody really knew where he went, but Joe Jordan was sitting in the crowd upstairs in the director's box. And he took me up, David Pleat, almost held my hand, but come on, grabbed my arm. And he said to Joe, Joe, will you have a chat with John right through the second half? And I sat next to Joe Jordan in the seats on the halfway line, and it was a fantastic education. He said, look, John, if you're going to have a long career in this game, he said, it's okay being aggressive. He said, son, but you can't be throwing your elbows. And we were saying stories about the game that it was a game when he played for Wales, played for Scotland, and he went up with Joey Jones, and it was Joe Jordan who actually handballed it, but the referee thought it was Joey Jones, and then Scotland got a penalty, and they scored them. I think it was at Anfield, and that's what took them through to the World Cup.
Yeah.
But Joe Jordan's never admitted that since today.
And you've never forgotten.
And it was a great education. So little things like that, like people don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to do these podcasts and these dinners, because people would never have known that. Joe Jordan was a great centre forward.
We loved him.
Played for AC Milan, and he was unbelievable. So to have had that at 16, you know, Joe Jordan speaking to you, and I'm thinking, well, do you know, he's brilliant.
But where did you get that self-belief from, John? I mean, did you, family-wise, was it something instilled, your mum, your dad? Because great character to go there, Luton, 16, you're on your own, and you just wanted to succeed. You had this will to win. Where did it come from?
Well, I don't know, probably my background as well. I'm from a working class council estate in Swansea, where lots of us are born on council estates, and I wouldn't say it was too rough, but it was a proper community. You know, a real community where you could leave the front door open. Nobody wanted any more money than the next door neighbour. Nobody wanted a bigger car. We were all on that community, and everybody looked after us. My dad knew who the thieves were. He knew this one and that one. He knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. And I think it was a brilliant grounding for me. There was one community sort of club, and my mum and dad would go over there on a Saturday night, and we'd ring them up, me and my brother and my sister. We'd be fighting in the house, and then I'd be phoning up, Dad. My dad would have to run to the phone, take a phone call. You lot bloody behave yourself. 781-500 it was. I can still remember the phone number. 01792 Swansea code. And that's what it was like. You know, I lost my sister 2 or 3 years ago, Hayley. She had a heart attack suddenly, so that's through the family, especially my mum and dad. But we had a great childhood. You know, my dad used to say to me, make sure you're home before 10 o'clock, before it gets dark. And I was just a little scallywag running around the council estate. And I just got this big opportunity to do something with my life at 16. So I don't know if that council estate, because I was exposed to all that. And my daughters, say for instance, they weren't exposed to it. So when they came up to Scotland and you send them into a school, a normal school, and there's full of council estates and people, I love council estates, I grew up on one, you know. They're not exposed to that, so it's a little bit different for them to settle and things like this, because everybody within that, around that school, all know each other.
Yeah.
They've all the parents know each other. So that's how I describe it, really. But going back to your, you know, I was never frightened of anybody on the pitch. Nothing scared me, you know. And I played against some of the biggest and roughest centre-backs. I'm not just saying that, but I never went onto the pitch scared.
Right.
Yeah, and I never, ever, can't remember being put on my backside.
You think of the centre
I
half
genuinely
time,
can't remember going down. And I had some brilliant battles with the likes of Razor Ruddock and Pallister and Bruce and all these other big centre-halves, really. So,
You remember big Keith Curl? He was a big hard centre-half. Keith Curl.
Keith Curl, I played against Big Joe McLaughlin.
Yeah.
What a big monster he was. So for Falkirk, at Falkirk's old
Right
stadium,
enough, yeah.
on pre-season for Luton. And I see Joe now last year when I went to watch a Falkirk game with my mate, and he's sitting around the players' bar and all that, you know, big handsome guy he is, yeah. But that was a memory I had.
It's not just how big these guys were in those days, John. Think about what you get away with in terms of...
You're right, well, you know, I saw you, we played in a friendly game, I know what you're like.
Well, the point is, you could get... I mean, I'm playing junior football and, you know, it was tasty.
That's right.
You got in and about it.
Yeah.
You played in a period when you were...
That's right, yeah.
What behind?
Well, I can remember playing against Razor Ruddock one day at Anfield, and Razor's coming into me, And I'm shouting at the ref, any chance? You got a Liverpool shirt on or something? Any chance of giving me a decision? And he's like that. Hold on a minute. So then the next one then, I'm going into Razor and I'm getting the decision. You could actually work with the referees.
Right. Okay.
You know, and you could have a bit of banter with them. And you see them now, they're all very straight-faced. They're almost trying to take the physicality out of the game now. You know, I still love first minute. The ball would go to the left back and I'd run across, so I'd put him in rosette. You know, he'd kick the ball down the line and go bang like that. And I'd go, ref, come on, first one, come on, first one. And he'd go, no problem, John, no problem. But nowadays, if you were to do that, you'd be off in 30 seconds if I'd done that now. And that's no good now because, you know, you're letting your team down. You can't win really with 10 men. It's difficult. You've been setting up all week in the formation. You go down a man and it gives the opposition a massive opportunity to beat you in the game. So the discipline side of things has got a lot better over the years.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned something before about the European endeavours with Arsenal. Not only did you play in the Super Cup against AC Milan, John, you played in the UEFA Cup final the following season.
Yeah, Cup Winners' Cup.
Winners' Cup.
Yeah, it's now the UEFA.
And you scored.
It's
You
now the
scored in the
Europa League.
final.
Yeah. Well, I was saying earlier on, I was telling someone that the difference between I lost in 5 finals, right? 5 finals. That's hard to take, really, when you think about that. And I scored in a Cup Winners' Cup final when I was 19 years old, right? And then a Schneider scored. It was against Real Zaragoza. Schneider scored, fantastic. Schneider scored. Gaspoye was playing for Real Zaragoza that night. And then it went to the 89th minute, and Naeem, an ex-Spurs player, Spurs Arsenal, big rivals, he scored from the halfway line, last kick of the game of extra time. I'm taking a penalty in the final, because I'd scored my penalty against Sampdoria in Genoa in the semi-final. Sven Eriksson Gornet was the manager of Sampdoria. Mancini was playing, Lombardo was playing. So we got through Sampdoria, and I'm thinking, I'm taking a penalty here. The next minute, I'm sitting in the dressing room, we could do a pin drop because we got beat 2-1. Now, that goal doesn't get a mention. And if you go into the Emirates, Alan Smith, the previous year, had scored the winning goal for Arsenal. They beat Malmo 1-0. Alan's picture is all over the wall. So that's the difference, you know, between winning the game and not the hero status. I never played football for hero status and all that pictures on the wall. But I always think there's a massive depth. Nobody remembers the losers. You know, I think, yes, say to kids, look, shake hands, win, lose or draw, teach them the morals and the integrity when they're young kids. Absolutely that. But don't ever accept losing. Don't ever accept, especially at the top level. You know, when you lose, it's got to hurt. It's really got to hurt, you know. And that's when you have to embrace then the wins that you get.
19-year-old European final, scores a goal.
John's making points there that I've actually got. We've got substance that goes beyond just this discussion, because if you think of how coaching gets done nowadays, and often it's not about winning, and there are no winners, and they try and cut down in competition. Personally, we were talking about the whole issue of producing winners. I don't think you can produce winners unless you've got it at an early age.
Yeah, that's right. But I just think you can spot them a mile away. You know, if you're watching a kid's game on a Sunday morning, under 9s, under 10s, you know, they lose. Some kids lose and they're running away. They can't wait to go swimming in the afternoon. They can't wait to get home and have their ice cream and have their Sunday dinner. And there's a kid there crying. There's a kid crying, walking off the pitch to his daddy.
Yeah.
Disappointed, gutted his team was lost. That, I'm not saying it means any more to him, but I think there's a bit of a fight for, you know, there's a little fire in his belly because he wants to win and he's upset. And I think you can spot them type of players, you know, even at the highest level now. People hate, you've got to despise losing. You know, you've got to come off the pitch and you give everything. And you know, even the top players now, Messi, Ronaldo, you see them. Remember Ronaldo in the 2016, I think it was the final of the of the Euros where Wales got to the semi-final. Ronaldo got injured in the fight, breaking his heart. He's breaking his heart. And if kids want to see about winning or losing or getting upset, then watch that game. It's got to mean something to you, you know.
He was throwing the toys at the pram last night, Tony.
I'm used to boost. I mean,
But that's because he...
Well, he's never played a Hampden. He's never scored a Hampden. No.
But no, it does give you the earlier point that John made there, gives us a wee opportunity to mention something that's happening on Saturday, which we were going to try and mention, which is the Tommy Gemmell Statute Committee, because they're marching from Craigneuk, where they're going to have the statue of Tommy, and they're marching to Parkhead before the Celtic game. They're going to be stopping in all the Celtic pubs with the buckets to try and raise as much money as possible. And the reason it's not a bad hook is because everybody remembers Tommy scoring in '67, but very few remember him scoring in 1970.
Yes,
because
I remember because I've done my little bit of history.
But there you go. That's the point about what you've made, John. It's not about hero.
And when he scored in 1970, that went to extra time as well.
Yeah. That's right.
That game went to extra time. So Celtic became so close to winning too.
Incredible. But even the Arsenal team that you played in, John, 2 European finals on the bounce. You win against Malmo, you lose against Zaragoza.
That's right.
And then fast forward to Seville and the disappointment in missing that final as well. Is it a regret? I know that your success was incredible, but is that a slight regret, the European aspect?
It's massive. It's massive. I've never really gone into it that much. I always say, it is what it is, luck and, faith and things happen for a reason. But I was devastated. That's the truth of it. Because I played in the 12 games out of the 13. I missed the final. And I scored that goal in Vigo, where Martin O'Neill still says to me now, without you, we wouldn't have got to the UEFA Cup final because of that goal. And the goal against Liverpool, which was my best goal of my career. I was a Liverpool fan growing up, Rush, all these guys. And to miss the final, it was like a piece of my heart had been ripped out, My parents had bought tickets. We were all going over, and I've got that phone call, and I've got to tell my dad, I'm out, Dad, I can't play. But they still came over, of course. I still went over to support the guys, and I'm standing on the touchline, I've got a suit on. It's 75 degrees, And I might have struggled, and I mean this, I might have struggled. A lot of fans say, John, if you were playing that night, the amount of fans that actually say that to me, say, we'd have won the game, just because how we went about it. We played Boa Vista in the semi-final. Sutton made a run, HARTSON made a run. You listen to Peter, what's it called?
On commentary.
No, commentary. What's it does? He's a comedian as well. I can't think of his name.
Peter Martin.
Peter Martin. Sorry, Peter. Listen to his commentary. It's unbelievable. He says Sutton, HARTSON, Larson with the goal. That was a semi-final. Yeah. Remember me and Rab going around and the fans were we're in the UEFA Cup final. We can't believe it. Martin's going all the dressing room, and I'm fit. So then we get back on the Sunday, which the fans called Beach Ball Sunday at Ibrox. I get brought down by Amoruso. Tono scores the penalty. I score our second goal, my 25th goal of the season. Nice. And after about 70 minutes, I stretched for the ball and my back went and I heard it popping. So I looked over to the bench and I went, I've got to come off. I'm done. So I limped off and I knew after that game that I wouldn't play, I wouldn't feature.
Nightmare.
So it was heartbreaking. I wouldn't say devastating because what was going on in the world is that, you never compare football to what's happening away from football. But in terms of missing that, having played in all the games, Paul Lambert eventually played and captained the team, but that particular season, it was Chris in midfield with Lenny and Stan, me and Henrik up top. So that was the formation, that was the personnel. But I definitely would have played. And it was Costa who played for Porto that night. And he was a big lump. He actually went on to play for Charlton in the Premier League. Jose Mourinho manager. So there's nothing more I would have liked to go on there and battle in the cup final, try and bring the trophy home. Got to say, his 2 goals that night were just
outstanding,
unbelievable. Tommy, how he got up for that goal, just ridiculous. It just sums him up as a player. But Yeah, it did hurt me, if I'm being honest, missing that game. Yeah.
Did you know right away? See, you
I
say
knew.
that he stretched.
Thing is,
Was
Tommy,
it
with
something that like you seen popped with?
yeah, it just popped. I think I burst a disc in my
Oh
back.
God!
And what it was, it's like with your back, everything goes through your back. My stomach, everything goes through your back, down your legs, everything. It's such an important. It's like the main cog of your body.
Yeah.
If it had been a torn calf or a muscular injury or a hand or an arm, then I would have got fit, because it was about 4 or 5 weeks in between that Rangers game at Ibrox where we won, and then to think then I was on 25 goals when we come back from the UEFA Cup final. We had about 5 or 6 games to play,
John.
and I would have added to my goal tally, and we lost that league by a goal. We lost that league by a goal. So there's no doubt the way I was going. So it was like a double whammy, really. But I always ask this question, whether the Celtic fans would have swapped the trip to Seville and that UEFA Cup final where they just all went. Everybody's got their stories and their own personal way they travelled and celebrated to a league title. You know, I know it's a league title, but I don't think you can ever take that journey away. You boys know you were supporters.
You spoke to Martin.
Yeah.
Because Martin's unequivocal about it.
Yeah.
And that is that he would have taken the title. Because he was angry.
Would he really?
That they won nothing.
Well, that's interesting.
He says that. Whether he means it or
Yeah,
not, I don't know. But he said it to us at the night of the Willie Mealy event. He said, Tommy, the biggest disappointment of that season for me wasn't Seville, it was that we lost the title.
Lost the title. But obviously, if we'd won in Seville, then the league title becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Listen, if you come in both, even better. I think Martin, the way he was such a winner, he'd have wanted to win both.
You scored 25 goals.
Yeah, that's right.
25
And to miss,
if that man's fit, we've won the
I agree.
and then to miss the last 5 games, I don't think it was Kilmarnock, it was Hibs, it was St Johnstone, whatever it was. There's no doubt that I've added to my tally. The way I was going, I had momentum, I was fit, I was flying. And don't forget, I scored the goal against Liverpool in the quarter-final. And I'm 2 games away from one of the biggest games of my life, you know. So yes, it did really, really hurt me. I've never really showed that sort of upset really when I'm doing gigs and crowds, and it takes a long time to explain it, you know.
Well, everybody I've spoken to who was involved in it, John, says that they haven't and they won't watch the game never again. They can't bring themselves to watch the game against Porto. But not only Celtic fans have said that you'd have made a difference. Martin O'Neill said it on that stage out there. Yeah. When asked the question, that you definitely would have. I prefer to look at it slightly differently, right? If you hadn't failed your medical at Ibrox, that swing, that generational dominance that we've enjoyed since 2000, that story might have been completely different.
Yeah.
So I look at it like that, because had you gone to Ibrox and scored 110 goals for Rangers, we wouldn't have been looking at the same kind of level of dominance that we enjoyed under Martin O'Neill with you in the hoops. So I try and put a positive spin on it.
You need to be positive, but
Yeah.
you need. I know you've told the story, but you need to tell the story about.
Well, it was like I was playing for Wales and we were playing Estonia on the Saturday. I trained all week. Gigs, Bellamy, Speed, we had some really, really top players in there. I was going to say Savage, but I'll leave Savage. But I hope he don't watch it.
Make sure he does.
So we had good players, and I remember we were making plans to fly to Estonia on that Friday night to play on the Saturday in like a European qualifier or some World Cup qualifier. And I remember it was the Friday morning and Mark Hughes came to my room, and the gaffer doesn't really come to your room. Do you know, and he knocked the door. Sparky, what unbelievable, one of my heroes.
What a player.
Incredible player. Best player ever lived with his back to goal. Frightening, holding the ball up. And he put a bit of paper in my, he said, John, look at that. He said, Rangers have just sent a telegram. He said, they've bid £6 million for you. Gordon Strachan is my manager at Coventry, and I could have got to Middlesbrough or Celtic in the end. Steve McLaren was selling Mark Viduka. But Gordon actually played a big part. I'm jumping ahead a little bit now. So Mark Hughes gave me a bit of paper and it said, look, John HARTSON, blah, blah, blah. He has to be at Cardiff Airport by 5 to 11. So David Murray's sending his private jet to pick him up. So phones my dad. I says, Dad, I'm off to medical for Rangers. Oh, fantastic, son. I'm delighted. And I went for the medical to sign because I had no allegiances. I'd only been to Scotland in my life once. I think that was for Arsenal. Never been to Scotland, but obviously I'd heard of the 2 big clubs, obviously. So I think I'm going up and I'm signing for Rangers. That's what happens when you go for the medical. So I arrive at Glasgow Airport with hundreds of people there, press, and I get taken to Ibrox. I'm walking down the side of the pitch. You've probably seen the picture. And Ronald de Boer is in the centre circle. And he's got his scarf up. And I shouted over, and he's looking over, because obviously he must have known I was signed and I was making my way up. And I said, give me 5 minutes and we'll post together type of thing. So I goes up the tunnel at Ibrox. The physio puts me on the bed and he checks my knee and everything else. Everything's fine. I go upstairs with my agent and my dad, and we thrash out a contract. It's a 5-year contract. It's a 1-year contract more than Celtic, irrespective. It's a 5-year contract. I'm sitting here, Sir David Murray's sitting there. There's about 12, it's a table, and there's 12 mahogany seats and a lovely table. So I'm in this big room, and I said, yeah, no problem. I said, I didn't even look at it. Didn't even look at the contract. I was 26 years of age. I was going to make money anyway. So he said, look, John, just before we put pen to paper, he says, the doctor's just going to whiz you along to Ross Hall for a little medical. He says, when you get back, son, he says, we're ready to go. He said, we get the press in, the photographers. He said, I said, great. I said, I'll go, yeah. So I went. I had 2 scans, one on my knee, one on my ankle. I was there 20 minutes. I come back. And then in the meantime, the scans had been sent over to the medical department. And I'm in the room with Dick Advocat, just me and Dick Advocat talking away. He's explaining to me this. I've got Ronald out there, Dutch, blah, blah, blah. And the contract's there, sitting in front of Dick Advocat. So I've got the pen, and then the Dutch doctor walked in, quite a big guy. And he went, I'm really sorry, Mr. Advocat, Dick. He said, there's something showed up on John's knee. So I'm like that. And then he said, look, he said, and Dick Advocat was very apologetic. He said, John, he said, we thought you could fit into this team. Exactly what we lost Mark Hadley 2 or 3 years ago. He said, you'd have been ideal for us. So I just said, well, what can you do? I'm naturally disappointed. I failed a medical, another one. And then I'm back on the plane with my dad. On my straight back to Swansea. My dad said to me, he says, you'll bounce back from this. Yeah, he said to me, don't ever think, this is it. Mm-hmm. He says, you'll come back from this, son, because that's was disappointed.
Yeah.
And I saw Ronald de Boer over in Qatar a couple of years ago at the World Cup, and we were in the same hotel. And I'm sitting having breakfast, and he's come in and he's joined me for breakfast or whatever. And he said, we could have been strike partners, and things that we chatting away and all that. It was just one of those things. And then it was one of those sliding doors moments then. I'm training with Gordon Strachan up in St Andrews and working really hard. And then Gordon says to me, Martin O'Neill's going to come and see you Friday. He says the £6 million has been accepted by Coventry. And I said, oh, fantastic. And Martin have said, John, you won't have a medical, so... Put my mind at ease straight away, and true to his word, Martin didn't turn up. Waited a couple of weeks, and then I put pen to paper. So it was good. So obviously come to a giant, the club, Celtic. I'd had a bit of needle about me because Rangers had turned me down. And it was one of them things where I always say I'm very honest. If somebody asks me a question, I like to think I give him an honest answer. Yeah. I would have signed for Rangers. I went for the medical to sign. Like a lot of players, if that's the way it was. And obviously then I get a chance to join Celtic. And then obviously the rest is history.
See, I done a wee bit of research. I stay in Cardonald, which is near the Rossall Hospital. I done a wee bit of research. So we found out the guy that had done the scan, Seamus Murphy McGonigal, who carried out the...
Is that right?
Who carried it.
You got his number, Tommy, have you?
Well done, Seamus. Well done.
Oh, really.
I think that your honesty is refreshing about that, Tommy, because it'd be easy to hide away from the fact that not only were you close to signing for Rangers, you would have done.
Well, I could sit here now and say, well, I only went up for the sake of it. I never really wanted to sign. But I, honest to God, put anybody else in my position. Mm-hmm. If you're not living in Glasgow, you're a big Celtic fan or a Celtic ex-player, and put anybody else in my position. I just did the thing that came to me, what was offered to me on paper, and genuinely, you looking back now, and I feel as if I don't think I might have been as successful at Rangers with the success and the management team I played under at Celtic and the team I played in and the players I played with. At the time, I have to say Rangers had good players. They had a very, very good side. But we certainly had the Indian side over Rangers. I won a lot more. Like, I won 3 titles in 5 years. Mm-hmm. The titles that I lost was by a goal and a point.
Yeah.
So that particular dominance, it don't matter if you win by 30 points or 1 point, a title's a title. But looking back on it, without sounding disrespectful to anybody, I believe things happen for a reason. I've raised 1.3 million for my charity. I was meant to live.
Yeah.
If I died, I wouldn't have been able to raise that money. So I've become a man of a little bit of fate. I believe in fate. I think everything happens. I think it's all in the stars. Your life's mapped out for you when you're on this earth. That's my belief. It's only what I believe in without going too much into everything.
John, think about all the things you're saying now relate to around you were saying earlier about your upbringing and your background. Because the reason you're such a decent guy, the reason who do you know that ever says a bad word about him, right? You do all these events, everybody comes away, big Joe, man.
Thanks, that means a little bit.
That doesn't come by accident. That comes because that's your character. That's who you are. And the work you've done with your charity, the work you do with GA. I mean,
but I've got to say, I'm a different person now to what I was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I think coming through the cancer makes you very humble, makes you very appreciative, ever so grateful that I was able to stay here to watch my kids grow up. So these things change you. And as you get older, the one good thing about it is you get a bit wiser. I've got wiser to people, I've got wiser to leaving earlier and doing the right things, and my children, they've got the best version of their dad now, whereas a few years back I was a little bit, a bit reckless, I would go out with this one and that one. I didn't really know the company, but you learn. My dad used to say, "What are you doing mixing with them?" And Dad, they'll be all right. Well, Dad was right. I soon found out, what was happening in my life, and so I am a completely different character now in every facet of the way I live.
See, even if you go a wee bit further back, John, British football's most expensive teenager when you sign for Arsenal. You're 18, 19 years of age, you've got money, everybody wants to be your mate. It must be difficult to see through that. It must be difficult to see through that, John. You've got a lot of hangers-on, wouldn't you, about that time?
Well, my dad calls them parasites and hangers-on. And I tell a story about when I was in hospital fighting for my life at one stage. And there were several people that came to see me, went the extra yard to come to see me. And when I left hospital, I realised that I'm on a new path now. I got clean from gambling. I'm 13 years now without a bet. I keep going to GA every single week, and that's made a huge difference to my life. Not betting, not having that addiction, my character, my time with my kids, my focus. Gambling doesn't take all my focus like it used to, like an addict. So when I left hospital, I thought, right, I'm going to get on the new path. And I know who I want to take with me, on my little train, on my journey. And that's my family, my children, my brothers, sisters, my bestest mates. A lot of them are where I grew up in Swansea. Boys that I'd gone shoulder to shoulder with through school, people that I love and everything else. And I've stuck by that. And I've got a small circle now. I've got a little small circle. I've got boys I go and play golf with. I got a couple of lads that invite me through to the games, and I've got my wife who's fantastic, and I've got my 5 kids, and that's the way I want to be. I keep a small circle. I'm not concerned about being on television. I'm not overly bothered. I've done that for 15 years. I'm going and I'm doing other things now, projects and things like that, which I enjoy. I've got trusted friends who I'm getting in and around. And that's what I'm saying about when I was years ago, back then, running around London for Arsenal or West Ham. I've completely changed everything in my life.
Nah, it sounds amazing, John. I mean, when you talk about being down at the bright lights of London, to pull it back to football for a moment, I'm always astonished at the level of manager that you worked under. So obviously, I think David Pleat was a big influence in the early days. He then worked with George Graham, Arsene Wenger, Bruce Rioch, Harry Redknapp, Joe Kinnear, Gordon Strachan.
Yeah.
And you come to Celtic and it's Martin O'Neill. On the international level, you spoke about Mark Hughes.
Yeah.
You know, exceptional managers who are looking at you having had their own careers and probably try to impart a lot of knowledge into you, and at that time you're a wee bit younger. When you look back now, let's focus on Martin and Gordon. How influential were those two?
Very influential. Gordon Strachan got me into a headspace where fitness was vitally important. When I went to Coventry, he worked me so hard. Every day, running on the sand dunes at St Andrews, getting fit for my move to Celtic. Mm-hmm. The way he spoke to me, the way he trusted me. And I think Martin, when he signed me, he understood me. He understood that I couldn't run the channels. He understood that I wasn't going to run around for 90 minutes like Maeda and Kyogo. I was different. I was an exceptional goal scorer, and I was an exceptional header of the ball, and I was strong, and I could bring players into the game. I could take hits in the back. Things would come off me. Henrik would get in and around me, and Petrov and these type of players. I loved crosses coming into the box, and we had a Gat and we had Thompson. And Martin would say, let's get the ball in the box. If John can't head it for goal, he'd knock it down. Then you've got Petrov and Lambert coming onto the ball. So I knew my role. I spoke about mastering the centre forward, that 18-yard box. And Martin understood that as well. And Martin used to say to everybody, do what you're good at and do it well. He tell you to do what you're good at and do it well. So he didn't expect me to do things I couldn't do. He was honest. He was. And then, and I always said, if Martin picked you for his team, I used to walk in the Celtic dressing room every Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock. The team would be on the board, and 99 times out of 100, I was in the middle of the team. I was number 10. I would play most weeks, and that was a privilege. That was a privilege looking at that board, and I've got Henrik, and I've got Petrov, and I've got Lambert, I've got Lennon, got a Gat, McNamara, Thompson, Sutton, and I'm thinking, we'll win today. This is a good team today, you know.
I had that confidence as well, Tommy, going into the games.
But don't you think, John, and try to make comparisons, and I know comparisons are always got weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
But see, the team that Martin built, I thought it was a team of men. It was a team of physical men.
Yeah.
I don't think you would ever have been standing in the tunnel and looked and thought, oh, I don't fancy this. Other teams would have looked at you and thought, don't fancy this. Well, I worry that recently we've no quite got that. I just feel physically.
Thinking Dortmund, Tom.
I'm thinking Dortmund, guy. I'm going to say it. I just think these guys, they frighten people.
Yeah, I think as well. I remember a story. I went on a boat with my wife and Alec McLeish and his wife several years after I'd failed the medical, and it was in the summer, and Alex said to me, he said, if I'd have been the Rangers manager on that day, he said, I wouldn't have left you out the building without signing you. Yeah. And that just goes to show some managers will take a risk. Martin O'Neill took a risk. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd failed 4 medicals. Medicals are always a risk. Some of the best players in the world have gone and flopped, you know, under big money. And he also said, John, I always felt, he said, whenever you had a corner or a free kick, he said, I'd be having kittens on the bench. He said he used to frighten the life out of me. And when you think you had Thompson from the right in swingers, you had Petrov from the left, and Henrik used to stand at the near post. He had a magnificent leap. The amount of times he'd get up and do that, and then you had Sutton running past the first post. You had me running past the penalty spot. You had Bobo Baldi running past the back post, and you had big Johan Mialbi at the back.
Jesus.
You know, so you've got 5 giants there, and all wanting to head the ball.
Yeah.
Not only there for the sake of running and being a body there, every one of them loved heading the ball. So the amount of set pieces we scored from was remarkable, really.
The physical, but also the leadership qualities of that team, Tommy. If you're in that dressing room, you're just thinking, captain. You look Lennon, Lambert, McNamara. These are all Tom Boyd. These are all
last
captains.
day the 4 captains actually played under them 4 you named there.
Incredible, eh?
Great
They were
guys.
all winners.
Yeah,
all
they were.
winners. And I just, it's mentality sometimes to do it, John, but I know it's a different market. I remember Martin telling the story about how he was told he was getting a budget over a 3-year period. And his strategy was to spend the whole budget in his first year and end up with success immediately. He said they always thought that, well, if I get success, then I'm not going to refuse me money over and above that. I just worry that physically, John, when it comes to Europe nowadays, they seem to be bigger, stronger, more physical, faster. I don't know how we deal with it.
Well, I think some of the players we've recruited, in particular Trusty,
Yeah.
he looks a decent size at the back. We don't know how well he's going to do. You never know. You know, Engels looks a really good player. Size, great engine, up and down, but he was taken off after an hour at Ross County. So I would say that these players who have come in, they need to get used to going to places like Ross County and delivering, because we were under the cosh at half time and the substitutes come on and made a huge difference. Kuhn with the goal was brilliant. That pass from Alistair Johnson split the left back and the centre back. And there's always one thing he was going to do, try and shift it on his left foot, and a great finish. And I thought we come on in the second half, and I thought we deserved to win the game anyway. But yeah, I think as well, Tommy, that the modern game, I know what you're saying about physicality. There was a lot of individual duels on the centre halves because nobody ever threw it out. Nobody ever threw the ball out. 20 years ago, everybody was kicking it.
Yeah.
And it was a duel between you and the centre half and the second balls. Very seldom did the goalkeepers throw it to the full backs. Now, nobody kicks it from the 6-yard box. So I think the game has changed a little bit. You know, you look at the likes of Kyogo, wonderful, you know, makes great runs, darts into the box, runs along the back line. I think Maeda's special. And there are players now that ain't got that physicality, but they're still wonderful, wonderful technicians. Callum McGregor is not particularly tall. Scott Brown is not particularly tall. Taylor, Alistair Johnson, probably a little bit taller. But I think the team have found a way of playing. And I think Celtic at this moment in time are in a fantastic, rich vein of form, and they're doing ever so well.
Would Martin's, I suppose I know his answer from his Leicester days, but would Martin, when we were playing in Europe in your day, accommodate his tactics and his formation to the opposition? Because my worry was we played a certain way against St Johnstone, and then went out and tried to play the same way against Dortmund. And I love Brendan. I think I think he's a master technician. I think he's an elite manager. I think he's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's a first-class guy. I wonder about the pride about we'll go and play our game rather than worry about their game. Aston Villa played Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
They played 11 behind the ball and scored on a break.
I get your point, and I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that I'm telling Brendan Rodgers how to play, because everything you've just said about him there, he's been successful at Celtic, you know, a double treble. He won the FA Cup with Leicester. He is a fantastic top level coach. But for me personally, I don't think when you go into these bigger games, and we've had lessons in the past, we've been thumped several times, right? Now, for me, what I would have done and what I would do away from home against a world-class opposition, Borussia Dortmund, who
Atalanta.
Champions League runners-up last season, a real team, right? In Germany, Atalanta, who beat Bayer Leverkusen last season in the Europa League final. Real proper teams that can hurt you, can seriously hurt you with their ability. Right, their strikers are 50, 60, 70 million pound. We've just picked up Ida for 9 million. It's a different stratosphere, really. We might get results, which we did. We were brilliant against Bratislava, outstanding. We came out of the traps, played well. But my view is, and what I would do, now, again, I'm not trying to tell Brendan how to pick his team. The buck stops with the manager. He picks his own team. I would have played the back four, which we normally do. And I'd have played 2 in front, which would have been Engels and Callum McGregor. And then you've still got your 3. So you've got Hitati, Maeda, Kuhn, and Kyogo. So it's like a 4-2-3-1 where, and I would have said, fullbacks don't move for the first half an hour. Let's soak up a bit of pressure. You've got protection in front of the back four, only for half an hour. And if it's 0-0 and we get a bit of joy, then we can start throwing 1 or 2 fullbacks forward, and and create that little bit of extra man in the middle of the park because there's already 3 in there. That's what I would have done. So for the first half an hour, because we have conceded an awful lot of goals first. We concede a goal and then almost you've got a mountain to climb. Okay, it never happened in Dortmund because we equalised within 20 seconds. Maeda got one back, and then we seemed to crumble. Then we conceded.
Don't get me wrong, John. Everything they touched
Yeah,
turned
that's
to
right.
gold. I mean,
You're
there is that element of it. But 5-1 at half time.
That's the way I would go, because it gives a bit of protection to the back four. Now, Brendan will turn me upside down in terms of tactics, but I just think that back four has got to stand there. It's got to defend. It's got to take a bit of a beating, and it's got to come back.
I think
I'm
he'll do
surprised.
it.
That's what I would, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Surprised
I don't want to talk out to school.
I know.
But I'm only giving my opinion. I'm watching the games and I'm thinking, if you play with a marauding forwards, you leave gaps. And these top players will exploit them gaps.
We're all brilliant sitting in the
Absolutely.
armchairs. We're all brilliant.
Of course we are, yeah.
But do you know what I'm surprised?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you didn't suggest a 3-5 1-1 instead of what you suggested.
Well,
because
but
the way Martin used to.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, 3-5-2, Martin.
Yeah, I know that.
He wanted to
we
play
Celtic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking
Yeah.
I would play Maeda top on his own. I would
Yeah.
play Kyogo just in behind.
Well, I quite like the
in
back
the
four.
5 through the middle.
Yeah, I do quite like the back four with a bit of protection, because if sometimes the fullback does maraud forward, in that system, you do create that extra man in the middle of the park. And you've still got your 3, but you've got 2 setters as well. That does give you that little bit of protection. They can intercept when balls are going into the front, like Lenny used to do brilliantly. The work that wasn't appreciated and people didn't quite see him do. The amount of times you would look and the midfielder would play it into the front and he would get across and then we're on the ball that he can play out then. Something like that, do you know? But listen,
we're all
Brendan might play 3-4-3 and win 6-0. But I can tell you as well, the crowd have their view.
Yeah.
The crowd are all going away saying, I think we should have played this. I'm given the freedom here to say what I
100%.
think. You know,
we're all doing it with respect, John.
Absolutely.
We're doing it with respect.
Absolutely.
We adore Brendan and what he's done.
Yeah.
And there is
and that system has been played for several years now. Anne's played exactly the same.
Yeah.
Brendan's been playing the same, and he's managed at Liverpool, Leicester. He knows what he's doing, but I'm just giving the opportunity here to give my views, and maybe every now and again when you go away in Europe against the top sides, Champions League sides, on a different level sometimes, I think give yourself a bit of a chance and go in a little bit more defensively and then work your way into the game. That's what I think.
Despite what he said after it, John, I think he will do that next week against Atalanta. I don't think he'll make the same mistake again that he did in Dortmund. But yeah, I think you make a great point when you're talking about physicality, because as well as Trusty and Engels, throw in Schmeichel and Ida. And there's 4 players that have come in with a different physicality. And I think even Vai's got a bit of physical.
Yeah, Vai looked
maturity
good.
to come.
I thought he looked a good player. He likes to get forward. He's very comfortable on the ball. Be interesting to see when the balls come, to the back post in terms of his height.
Yeah.
Can he deal with that man on the right who's coming in and looking to head the ball with the opposition? How he deals with that. He has to be side on. Taylor struggled a bit with it when the long ball over the top beats the two defenders, and you are there. You got to be side on. You got to look at the ball. You got to see the man who's coming in. I'm just worried. I think one or two just take him. He's got to jump early. He uses tactical announce.
I'll say this about him, John. Valley or Vowel, whatever we say it. I apologise for mispronouncing it. I thought he showed up well against Ross County in the physical side of things.
Yes.
Because I thought that would have been a bigger test for him.
Absolutely.
And he came through it with flying colours. And he actually, by the end of the game, was still up and down the park. So he's got a really good injury as well.
And I think McCowan's done great.
Aye.
And I think we will see a bit more of him. I hope we do.
Yeah.
But you know what? Not because of sentimental values that he's a Celtic fan and all this. Because he's a bloody good player.
Exactly.
That's why you want to see more of him. Otherwise, you got these £11 million Engels and you've got Callum who's your captain. Brendan keeps everybody on their toes there. And he's shown in the past, if you're not at it every week, he will give players an opportunity. And that's what I also like as well. But I like McCowan. I think he's got a little bit about him, isn't he?
Brilliant.
He'll be in the Scotland squad, I think, before the end of the season. Tommy, before we wrap this up, I want you to just have a wee word about a good pal of yours who used to play for Dukla.
On Sunday at the Rock, at the Jimmy McGrory Park, hopefully there'll be more in the future about the Jimmy McGrory memorial statue project. There's people hopefully going to do something about that. But on Sunday at 12 o'clock, we're going to have a game, and it's going to be the Dukla, who Jerry used to run and captain, Jerry Collins, fantastic big player, big manager, lovely guy. Sadly, passed away recently, and we all loved him to bits. And in his memory, we're going to play a rock select on Sunday, and we're raising money for local charities that Jerry also supported. So it's a fantastic cause, and I would just appeal to Celtic fans, let's go out on Saturday, let's beat Aberdeen on Saturday, and then on Sunday get yourself to Jimmy McGrory Park. There's going to be some former players. I don't know if I'm able to say some
I've
of the
heard
names.
a few, but I'm scared to say, Tom.
There's going to be some former players coming to play, some big players.
Big names.
John's mentioned one of them just a wee minute ago there. But anyway, please get yourself to Jimmy McGrory Park. Let's raise as much money for these local charities, and let's do something for Big Jerry Collins.
Brilliant. Well said.
Well
Tom.
done, Tommy.
John, I cannot wait to share that stage with you next week.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks for joining us on a Celtic
Pleasure.
State of Mind. Good man.
Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant,
Cheers, Tommy.
Paul.
Thank
Brilliant,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining us at Barra's Art and Design, another phenomenal guest in John HARTSON. Join us again next week at 6 o'clock on Friday night, for this is a Celtic State of Mind.